Welcome to the St. Matthew's Episcopal Church podcast, coming to you from Northern Virginia. We're so glad you're here. Today, we hope our message inspires you to better know and share God's love. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and join our weekly newsletter, The Friday Flash, to stay updated on all of our events and services. Let's dive in.
Up well, because what we're going to be talking about, what direction do we look? Do we look outward at the lights, or do we look inward to home, right? And home isn't found out there. Home is found in here. So let's talk about that. And because I love you all very much, oops, not that, but because I love you all very much, I thought we'd do a little education so we're all a little more with it. All right? For our young folks, you're already with it, but for all of us old people, we need a little bit of help. So So this is called the FEAR family, and it's all the acronyms that start with FO. So fear of. All right? You never knew there were so many, did you? So we're going to see how many of these we can get. I have my cheat sheet here because I would never get them without them because, you know, I'm old. So first one's easy. We all know what FOMO is, right? Fear of missing out. Okay, missing out. Okay, how about FOPO? Fear of better opportunities. Okay, so a fear of better, I'm going to abbreviate to OPS. And so this can lead to paralysis, what they call analysis paralysis. So we're always looking for a better opportunity, and so the opportunity before us, because it's not perfect, we don't do anything. We don't move. All right. How about FOPO? I like this one. FOPO. Pardon me?
I can't say that.
I think that would be FOFU, but FO. Yeah, sorry. Pardon me, what? Well, that's very, very close. It's fear of wait, let me make sure I find what are we on? Yeah, okay. So yeah, this is fear of finding out. And this is actually something Josh talked about a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. He talked about buying a new car, and then he didn't want to find anything else about cars for fear that there was a better car he should have bought, right? So sometimes we have an opinion on something, we've done something, we don't want to know anything else because we don't want anything to say we should have done something differently. So fear of finding out that maybe there's a better option. Let's see, what have I got? This. Okay, FOMO. This is sort of like what George was suggesting, not me, except it uses a more benign word. And so if you think of me, this one might actually sort of be, messing up. Yeah, messing up. That's right. Fear of messing up. And that's, well, I mess up all the time, so I'm not terribly afraid of it. Okay. How about FODA? Disappointing? That seems like that would make sense. I might even like that one better. FODA is fear of doing anything. So, again, just exactly what it sounds like, not doing anything because we're afraid to do anything. And then FOSO, this one is fear of starting over. So your job this week is to use one of these in a conversation. Pick any one, use it in a conversation. Preferably with somebody under 21, right? So you can gain a little. Okay. And then the last one, which is what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be this is where we're going to camp out today. The last one, and we talked about this at one service last week, but I can't remember which one, and I forgot it in all the others. So this is fear of people's opinions. That's exactly right. Fear of people's. I didn't leave enough room. Opinion. Okay, so FOPO, that's what we're going to talk about today. Fear of other people's opinions. The person who coined this term is a guy by the name of Michael Gervais. I think I might have mentioned him last week too, at least at one of the services. I can't remember which one. He is probably the premier expert in the world right now on performance psychology in sports. And so like when the Olympic team gathers here in a few weeks, they'll probably, a portion of them or whatever will gather somewhere. They'll have a house, and he'll be in that house, and he'll be counseling all the people who will be there on how they can do the very best. He's a wonderful guy. I mean, he has so much to say, and he's very, very humble. So when he talks about fear of other people's opinions, what he's talking about, in one sense, we all need to worry about what other people think about. We get this from our evolutionary history. When you're part of a tribe, you needed to belong to a tribe, otherwise the tribe would kick you out, and you'd be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or killed by a marauding tribe. So we needed to be in our tribe, so we needed to be aware of what's going around us, so our tribe would continue to love us and accept us. But with fear of other people's opinions, what happens is that fear becomes to be out of control. And so we're always scanning other people's responses to us. So we're always looking out to see how people are responding and whether or not they're rejecting us. And if we get any indication that people are they're rejecting us, like I see Sarah going to sleep right over there. No, she's not. I'm just teasing them. Then I'm going to change up everything that I'm saying, right? Because I don't want to be rejected. So I'm reading cues, and if I begin to get any sense that you don't like what I'm saying, that you might reject me, that you wish I was going to do something, then I begin to change up. I begin to conform, to contort myself in some way, to deliver in accord with your expectations, so that you won't reject me, so that you'll like me, so that you'll think I'm great. And that's what it really is. And what happens is an inordinate amount of our brain gets devoted to this constant scanning and adjusting, and it doesn't really leave any energy for anything else. Well, believe it or not, although they wouldn't have called it this is what Jesus and John are facing in today's gospel. Because there was overwhelming public opinion that they shouldn't have done what they did. I think that's terrible English. See, that's me saying I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just going to say shouldn't have. So there was overwhelming public opinion that what they were doing was totally inappropriate. Not what anybody expected. And we get some of that where John, when Jesus comes to John the Baptist, Johnny B, and says, hey, Johnny, will you baptize me? And Johnny says, no, heck if I will. And the word that's used there, both the tense of the word and the word, shows that this wasn't a minor disagreement and it didn't just happen once. This is an ongoing disagreement. They have words, and those words go on for a while. John is vehemently objecting, and he's doing so for a considerable period of time, trying to tell Jesus that this is not what anybody expects and this is not appropriate, therefore we shouldn't do it. Why is he saying that? Well, a bunch of reasons. He's just told everybody that Jesus is coming to town as a great warrior king, right? He's going to come with a threshing fork in his hand and harvest all the fields. Think, battle him of the republic. But Jesus is coming, and instead of, he's coming in the middle of nowhere, and he's starting by asking John to do something for him. I mean, this isn't the picture that people want to see of the Messiah. And then there's this idea that really most people who were being baptized were either Gentiles who were unclean, or Jews who had somehow made themselves unclean. If you were a good Jew, you were already clean. You were clean by birth. And so you didn't need to be baptized. So the religious officials, so on and so forth, they weren't coming out to be baptized. They were already clean. And so for Jesus to get baptized, he's by association going to make himself unclean. Now, wait a second. I mean, people are going to say, no. The Lamb, John's just been saying, this is the Lamb of God. The Lamb of God is spotless and without blemish. And now Jesus associates with the unclean. And if you're getting baptized because you're doing something wrong, you can just hear people in the crowd saying, what'd he do? What'd he do anyhow? I mean, what's the skeleton in his closet? I heard that's not how you want to start a ministry, is it? I mean, that's not how you want to start things off. And so this is a problem. And then where this is happening is, and then John has said that, that Jesus is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And John is basically nothing compared to him. I'm not even worthy to untie the shoelaces on his sandal. And now, now what happens is instead of John serving Jesus, Jesus is going to be, I got that backwards. Now Jesus is going to need to John is going to have to do something for Jesus. Jesus isn't going to do something for John, right? So it makes Jesus look less than John. It looks like John's the power. Jesus needs something from John, so it looks like John is the greater of the two. And Jesus is nobody at this point. So they want Jesus to get off to a good start, but it's looking like they're keeping John on the throne. So it's like, this is bad news. And then finally, this is happening out in the wilderness, not in the temple. Everybody expected things like this to happen in the temple. This violates the hierarchies by which they structured their whole religious practices. And so it's deeply, deeply threatening. So public opinion, what other people thought should be done, is very different than what Jesus asks to be done. And so this is the problem with FOPO, is that FOPO constricts who we are. It limits who we are. If God is calling us to be this person, then we conform and distort and contort ourselves to be somebody else so that we better fit in with everybody else, so that people like us, so that we're all good, whatever it may be. And because FOPO is always running in the background of our minds, it takes up all our energy. It's like a computer program that's always running, that takes up resources and bogs everything else down. Just totally exhausting. And so we don't have energy left to actually enjoy our relationships, to actually enjoy life. All our energy is just going into, what do they think of me? What do they think of me? How do I make them think I'm better? That is the problem with FOPO. It was the problem for Jesus and John, and it's a problem for you and for me. So then the next question becomes, what do we do about FOPO? We need some mechanism by which we turn our outward gaze inward, right? And that mechanism turns out to be, it's two things. We're only going to talk about one. And that is purpose. That is purpose, right? Purpose becomes the mechanism by which we turn that outward gaze, looking at everybody else, and we turn it inward and reorient ourselves. And John and Jesus know this. And so they sort this stuff out internally. And that's why John is able to acquiesce and say, the most important thing is no matter what anybody else thinks, I know what God's called me to do, and that's to serve you, Jesus. So if you ask me to do this, I'm going to do it. And it's why Jesus never for a second compromises. Jesus knows what he's called to do. Jesus knows who he is. He's not looking out to anybody else or anything else to validate that, to stroke his ego, do that. Whether they like it or not, this is what Jesus is going to do. And he's playing for that audience of one. And for him, that audience of one is God the Father. And he's baptized, and God expresses his approval, in fact, by the dove coming down from heaven. And so, in much the same way, if we're going to combat FOPO too probably, then we need to know our purpose. Because purpose is internal, it's bigger than we are, so it has more power, and it's future-oriented. It pulls us out of the present. It pulls us out of being stuck in the moment where we're worrying about what everybody else wants us to do. And so it becomes critically important that we understand our purpose, because then it shifts our measure of what we should or should not do from, are the people around me going to like this, to, is this true to my purpose? Not, will other people approve of this? Will my family approve of this? My coworkers approve of this? Will my church members approve of this? Will my husband, will my wife approve of this? Will whoever approve of this? But again, is this true to who I am, to what I'm calling to do, and what I'm called to do? And then, so the measure of our life doesn't become how other people evaluate us. It becomes the meaning and impact of our life. And those are very, very, very different fuels. One will chew you up and spit you out and burn you out, and the other is sustainable and leads to a rich and meaningful life. So, what we do about it is we get crystal clear about our purpose. Are you clear about your purpose? And then we lean into that rather than just trying to be whatever the people around us want to be. What does that look like? All right, and with this, we're going to finish. Just two parts to look at it theoretically, and then look at a very practical example of this theoretically. And here we're going to switch to another book. This one is by Morgan Housel, who's written a bunch of great books. But his most recent one is How to Spend Money. Now, I didn't read that for a while because I didn't think I had any problem with that. It's like, I got that down, so, I don't need anybody to tell me anything more about that. But then, I mean, it's a fantastic book. He is such a wise man, and I'm really tempted, and maybe I one day will, just send him an email and say, how did you get to be so wise? Because I'd like to know. So much what he says is just so good, and he's so humble, which I love about him. He's so humble. And so one of the things that he says is that when people don't know their purpose, when people don't really know who they are, we default to using money to tell other people who we are. Because it's easy, it's fast, and everybody sees it. If the way I establish myself in life is to really actually build something, it takes a long time to build something. Money is so much faster, so much easier. So if I can just get a whole bunch of good things, have a certain lifestyle, that says to everybody that I've made it. And he has this theory, and I'm going to read it to you, and I really want you to consider this, because I think this is brilliant. I got it here somewhere. All right, here it is. He says, listen to this, this is challenging. I tend to view my own material desire as a loose proxy for the inverse of what else I have to offer the world. All right, that probably sounds like gobbledygook. What does it actually mean? The higher my desire for fancy stuff, the less I feel like I have real value to offer. You see what he's saying? Now, hear the first part again. I tend to view my own material desire, my need for things, my need to show off things, my need to have a certain level of things, certain lifestyle, so on and so forth, as a loose proxy for the inverse of what else I have to offer the world. If I'm clear about what I have to offer the world, man, then that's what I'm leaning into, not all the stuff. All right? Again, huge difference about those two. And he says, and this is, I love this, he talks about when he was young. Now, when he was young, he's different than our young people here. You all are so much more advanced than we were when we were young. I mean, you guys got it going on. We were kind of clueless. And so he says, when he was young, he dreamed one day to own a Ferrari because he was young, dumb, had zero social skills, and even fewer job skills. And so, in other words, he didn't really have anything to offer the world. He hadn't developed that yet. He hadn't developed any of those skills. And in the absence of those skills, the way he wanted to telegraph to people that he had it going on was having a Ferrari, right? And then he says, today, I am completely content with my more modest car. And believe me, he could own 20 Ferraris if he wanted to. And aspire to gain respect and admiration by being a good father, a good husband, and a decent writer. And things I had no chance of offering the world when I was 20 years old. And so, I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, is when we're clear about who we are and what our purpose is, then we know that's what we have to offer the world. And then we don't need to play the game, playing parts that some other people have written for us by using what we do and what we do with our money. And that we have the opportunity then to bring our money in line with our purpose. So the final thing I want to do is I want to read you an example of a person who did that. Her name is Lynn Twist. I don't say this apologetically, but in some ways I hope that in religious circles this actually gives her more credence. You know, if she was a religious person, you might think that she's just drinking the Kool-Aid. She's not a religious person, at least not as we'd define it. But she's striving to be a good human being. I mean, that's her motivation. That's, from what I can tell, her only motivation is is conscience and to be a good human being. So she's not trying to tithe. She's not trying to do anything like this. So she says this, and this was written in California in the mid-'70s. So you compare prosperity then to now, we've just, things have escalated. So, but see if it's still appropriate. She says, the money was flowing in and everything we acquired or used the money for led us to desire to spend more money on the next thing, the next person, the next purchase, or the next reason to buy more stuff. To be socially literate, we felt we had to learn about wine, about fine wine. And when we did, we needed a wine cellar. We bought a fast sports car. And then, when we had a family, we needed another car, a station wagon for the children. We had a wonderful house, but somehow it didn't seem finished without some impressive art. As soon as we began to learn about art, we wanted to buy at a higher level. Our friends began to have summer homes, so that seemed like the next must for us. Once we began to buy more expensive clothes, we needed newer, nicer shoes to match. Then our coats had to live up to the clothes they covered, and our watches had to keep pace. I don't think I got that memo. The list of upgrades was endless. In our social circles, and see if this doesn't sound like Northern Virginia, just think of your Instagram feeds or whatever it is. In our social circles, vacations became like merit badges of the affluent lifestyle. If you want to fit in with the popular crowd, telegraph who you are, you were expected to take exotic vacations. Suddenly, driving to Yosemite or simply camping wasn't enough. It had to be skiing in Sun Valley or sailing in Hawaii. One thing led to another, and it all seemed so important. Then I felt a call from my soul. And when you read about people who go to make a real difference in life, it is almost always a call in their soul. Because you have a call and I have a call, and the only question is whether we answer. Jesus, John, they have calls. Just reading about Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale had a profound call, and it was, for years she didn't do anything because of FOPO. It was going to mean, much like this woman, it meant breaking with all kinds of things. And so she gets this call, and she's not speaking religiously. She's just saying deep down in her soul, and how much more is this true for a person who understands that there's a God who's extending a call to you and to me. I felt a call from my soul that was so deep and so profound that I could not deny it. I came to recognize and I had to address the inappropriate way we were living. It was then that we purposely began to turn our resources, our time, our energy, our money, the accumulation of material wealth toward our longing to make a difference with our lives. Let me just ask you, how many of you long to make a difference with your lives? I think you all do. I just long to make a difference in my life. And are we doing that? And at different phases in our life, those things look different. If you're making a difference in home, that's the most important place of all. But what is God calling you? Where do we make that difference? And so it was then that we purposely began to make a difference in our lives. This change of heart brought about a change in our relationship with money. Once we began to align our money decisions with those deeper core values and our highest commitments, we experienced a dramatic shift, not only about what we did with our money, but also how we felt about money, about our life, and about ourselves. Eventually, we came to know ourselves not for what we had owned, but for what we gave. Not for what we accumulated. Are you still in the accumulation phase? But for what we allocated to the work of making a better world. There are 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 ways where the voices all around you are calling you to do something that is not true to who you are or God's purpose for you. Just like there was for John and Jesus. They knew better. I hope you will too. And I hope I will too. Amen.
Thank you for listening. If you're in the Northern Virginia area, we invite you to join us for worship or any of our events. For directions, service times, and information about our online services, visit stmtts.org. That's stmtts.org. Until next time, go in peace and share God's love.